Welcome to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well, you know, that's not a rib.
She pooted.
What a rib?
No, yeah,
There's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
You, Bruce.
I love you. Give me double cheeseburger. Double cheese. Double mayo. Double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. I don't think I could be better, Connie.
I'll be honest, I did not have the best day, but before we clicked record, I'm just tickled. I'm in a great mood now.
Cheered you up.
I'm so glad we're here. I'm so glad we're finally talking about the Hart Foundation. And I know we don't talk about
You're
currents.
the one.
Yeah, I want to talk about the Hart Foundation. I think Natty might listen too. Shout out to Natty. Maybe TJ. Thank you guys for tuning in. Boy, what a run you guys are on. What an incredible pay-per-view over the weekend. Survivor Series set all kinds of records. Bravo. We saw the Raw rating bounce back in a major way. And hey, it's like you always used to say here on the show, never say never. CM Punk back in the WWE. It's an exciting time to be a WWE fan. Thank you, Bruce.
Well, never say never, man. Yeah. It's like I said, I would never get another shoulder surgery in 1 week. 1 week, this one gets cut upon, ripped apart, and just labrum sewn up and rotator cuff sewn up and chips out of my ball joint and all that good shit. Just can't wait. Absolutely cannot wait. So I'll be doing the show like this. And then you'll be able to say anything, and I'll just be saying things that I won't remember or anything like that.
Oh, dude.
It'll be great.
Next week's show, Bruce on pain meds. That's going to be an all-time Something to Wrestle.
And then I'll have the nerve block will still be working, man. So I don't know about pain meds, but I'll still be a little loopy. I'll still have some of the anesthesia in me and everything going and working right and all this stuff. And somebody sent me a picture today of this guy with
Dixie
Carter.
Carter.
Said, look, it's Jerry Jarrett and Dixie Carter. And I said, Jerry was never that fat and or gray. But
You didn't say that. You said Jerry was never that tall.
that tall. And or, well, yeah, he was this gray, I guess, but still.
Hey, we didn't talk about that, but yeah, I mean, I knew you told me ahead of time that you had invited her and that you guys had remained friendly, but I think a lot of people were shocked that Dixie Carter was backstage at a WWE event. I don't know, like the idea that she's there with you and Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes, and it was really cool.
I've always said it, even in, our TNA podcasts were sometimes a little bit controversial. I've always maintained that love Dixie. I think she's a wonderful person, and we have remained friends to this day. She had dreams about me in my heart, and reached out. And thought it'd be great, since we were going to be in Nashville, to invite her to the show and say hello. And it was terrific to see her and reconnect and say hello.
I love it.
And her son is like a giant.
What?
Her son, who last time I saw him, he's like about 2 feet tall, and now he's like a giant, and he looks like Justin Timberlake.
Wow.
He's like 8 feet tall.
He's going to have
Seriously, 8 feet. At least. Maybe 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is he going to be choke slamming fools on Monday Night Raw sometime soon?
Well, I'll tell you, if he were in the Tokyo Dome, he would be 12 feet tall.
Will you stop?
What? I'm just saying that, because in the Tokyo Dome, it's obviously better. But
you know what? Hang on. I know I forgot something to bring up last week that we need to acknowledge. But before we do, as you and I are recording right now on this very day,
today,
it is one of your great close personal friends' birthdays, and I know you like to sing on the show. Do you want to sing "Happy Birthday" to Mr. JBL?
You know what? I left him. I'll tell you the message I left him this morning was, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Donkey. Happy birthday to you. JBL loves donkeys.
He does.
He does. He loves donkeys. So
I've
I
heard
wish him
that.
a happy donkey birthday.
I also wanted to acknowledge, I don't think we've talked about this on the program.
What?
I know we talked about it off air with a group text, but your other great close personal friend, one of the best friends you ever had, Mr. Gerald Brisco, if he wanted to hook you, you'd be hooked, is now, along with his brother Jack, taking his rightful place in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did he lose a bet? I mean, think of how silly that is. You know, there's nothing that gives Dave Meltzer any credibility whatsoever. So therefore, being in that Hall of Fame has zero credibility to me. It's a joke. Meltzer has no talent other than to talk about rumor, innuendo, and make shit up and lie. There is no talent. And until today, I probably would have made the statement there's no talent in the Meltzer family.
We know that's not true.
But now we know that is not true. Folks, I'm going to say something nice about Dave Meltzer. His brother, Scott, right?
Scotty.
Yes. Scotty is an extremely talented individual.
Yes.
I thought it was, a haha thing at first when I was made aware of this, but do yourself a favor and check out scottyandtrink.com. This is Dave Meltzer's brother. And dude, I'm going to go. That's him right there. And that's Trink with him. Without a doubt, probably one of the most talented jugglers, and he does a unicycle thing as well. But I was mesmerized with the videos. Guys, this is not a bit. This is not a joke.
This is real life. He's a very talented man. Yeah.
This guy is incredibly talented.
Yes.
I don't believe that they came from the same gene pool.
Oh, will you stop?
I can't believe that, because this guy actually has talent and actually displays it and goes out and puts his talent out for everybody to see. And, man, do yourself a favor. If you ever get a chance to see Scotty and Trink, man, holy cow, what a show. And I'm one of those people. I love those kind of, carnival type skills and circus type things. I love the circus. I love the carnival, but I like it when somebody's really good. He does knife throwing. He does juggling. He does unicycle bit. And absolutely, I'm going to go out on a limb here. And I'm going to say he's up there with Pip the Magic Dragon as far as his talent. And
wow.
Really, I'll put this guy over any day of the week, twice on Sunday. Your brother is a horrible human being, and I'm not fond of him at all. But Scotty, hey, man, shout out to you. You're amazing. And what a great deal. Again, I thought it was a goof. And then I started watching going, holy shit, this guy's actually talented and very good. So there was a cheap plug that
not cheap. It's expensive to advertise on this program.
It is. That was God, I just gave his brother a freebie plug on here. But again, I'm just so shocked that gene pool has talent.
Stop it. Hey, so listen, the Observer.
You want me to look? I'm being honest here. I am shocked that gene pool has talent because Dave doesn't have any of it.
But here's the thing:
other than lying and making shit up.
Can we just pause on the Dave Meltzer bashing for just a minute?
I was talking about Scotty Meltzer and how talented.
But I was talking about how Jerry Brisco went to the Observer Hall of Fame, and I want you to hang on. Meltzer doesn't decide who goes in the Hall of Fame. People vote.
The fact that it has his name attached to it or the Observer or anything else just brings it down.
Oh,
because it's nothing more than a gossip rag. It's not even. I mean, it's less than nothing to me.
Well, maybe one day Jerry will be on with a 5-time.
I don't even think Jerry would accept the congratulations on that because he's just kind of like, eh.
I think in the group text he asked what it paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what it paid? Exactly what it's worth. Nothing.
Well, I mean, he could be in the Karate Black Belt Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but he's not.
But if he's got a checkbook, he could.
Hall of Fame.
My bad.
And there's only one 4-time inductee into the Black Belt Hall of Fame.
I have it on good authority that Booker T is trying to be the first five-time.
Well, he's got to be a one-time first.
Well, but he's got that axe kick.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Scotty and Trink, they might be able to get in there because they can throw knives and shit.
Listen to you.
What?
I don't even know where to go with this.
Say something nice, and then you get hot.
No,
I just you're hot. I can tell you're hot.
Stop messing with Dave. Can we do?
You're hot.
Can we be nice to Dave? It's the holiday season. Let's be nice during the holidays. Can we do that?
That's how I thought I was being nice.
Yeah, to his brother
in the family. It all went there.
Okay.
That upsets you, doesn't it?
No, listen, you know what? It's impossible for me to be in a bad mood.
Upset you. You had a bad day, and then we had a good day, and then now I've upset you. I'm sorry.
Can we talk about one more positive current thing and then talk about the Hart Foundation?
I don't know.
Randy Orton's back. Scale of 1 to 10. How excited are you?
About 37.
Yeah, dude. He's one of those guys where, you know, he had been gone for so long. I'd kind of gotten used to the show without him. But then when he's back, I'm like, oh man, and I know we talk about current stuff, but the crowd lost their mind on Daddy's back. Dude, what a great performer. So glad to see him back. He looked like $1 million at the Survivor Series, doing his thing just in time for the Rumble, just in time for WrestleMania. Man, WWE and Randy Orton just go together like peanut butter and jelly. Glad he's back.
There you go.
Today, we are going to go way back in time to talk about another pair of greats, the Hart Foundation. One of my absolutely favorite tag teams as a kid. Of course, we're talking about Bret the Hitman Hart and his tag team partner, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I mean, when you think about tag team wrestling in the WWF, I got to say, this is the tag team I think of first. And maybe it's because of when I was coming into my fandom, but they were such a big part of my early fandom. I was a big fan of their presentation and the glasses and the finishing maneuver and the colors. And it was just, I don't know. They stand out to me when I think about 80s, cause I started watching in 88, and that tag team is the tag team I think of first. When you think of 80s WWF tag teams, who do you think of first, Bruce?
I usually think of, and this is actually probably 70s, but I think of two teams. I think number one, Chief Jay Strongbow and Sonny King. And number two, Rick Martel and Tony Gurria. Back in my day, by God. To me, I don't know why, they seem to get the most magazine play back in the 70s, right? Because all the magazines were based in New York. So, you know, WWE got a lot of play in the magazines, and those were the guys who were featured. So I remember, you know, there was also Tony Gurria and Dean Higuchi, that were a great tag team. I don't know if they were ever champions, though. I know that Tony and Rick were great tag team champions, but there's a lot of them. It's funny that come to mind, but I remember just as a kid, because Dean Ho had been in Houston and gone up there. So like he caught my eye, and he was with Tony Gurria, and then Tony Gurria and Rick Martel, and Rick had been through Texas. But Sonny King and Chief Jay Strongbow, I just thought that was like a really weird team, because Sonny King had like the peace thing on his trunks and everything. And then there was Strongbow with the headdress and everything. So it was a unique team. And it's strange how that's where I go to is my first exposure to the WWF. Was Strongbow and Sonny King. That's crazy. But I think in the 80s, you know, you go to Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson was a big one for me. And when they first went national, it was also like Murdoch and Adonis. Yeah. Were a great tag team. And when you think of almost the current, it's just weird how my mind works. It's the current stuff to me was the Hart Foundation, because Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart related, they're brother-in-laws. And man, you talk about an in-sync tag team that probably never could have talked about anything, that they were just that in tune to each other that people could never articulate why they were such a great tag team. They were such a great tag team because they were family. They knew each other inside and out. And there was just that unspoken bond between them that made them great. And I think that they're one of the top 5. They're definitely one of the top 5 tag teams of all time in WWE.
We've talked a little bit about tag team wrestling and how at different times it's maybe not been as in fashion in the WWE. And we've talked about some of the economics of that and how other territories were really built on tag team wrestling, like Mid-Atlantic. But just take a listen to this list of tag teams. We'll start with the British Bulldogs. They win the tag straps in 86 at WrestleMania 2. And then it's the Hart Foundation, and then Strike Force, and then Demolition, and then the Brainbusters, and then eventually Colossal Connection, and then the Rockers, although it kind of doesn't count. Then the Nasty Boys, then LOD, and you could start to see it. The company evolved, and we had other tag teams like the Steiners. But when I think of that heyday, man, I think of like Demolition and the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs and Arn and Tully. And it's just, what an incredible tag team division. But I think what I always gravitated to the most is, like you said, you have these two different styles. They're not tag team specialists like they would call the Rockers or the Rock and Roll Express or the Midnight Express. You got a big power guy, and then you got a technician finesse guy, not necessarily a high flyer, but I like that combination. They're different. They're not the exact same. And they have these larger than life looks, the crazy sunglasses, the crazy goatee. I mean, this was about, the quintessential WWF tag team for me, at least for me in my fandom in the 80s.
And they were family.
Yeah. What a great story.
And you add to that, Bret Hart.
Yes.
Jim Neidhart.
Yes.
And
Jimmy Hart.
Hart.
Yes.
The manager. So it was truly a foundation that was simple to understand, and they were all made for each other.
I mean, if you're looking with us over on YouTube, you see it's just a totally different presentation. Like, I know they're all wearing sunglasses, but they're all a little different haircuts, different builds, these guys were selling tickets. And I'll tell you, these days, if you're looking for tickets, look no further than Game Time. We want you to download the Game Time app. Lord knows I'm glad I did. I think I've told this story before, but I want to repeat it again. I got a message from my daughter earlier this year. It was in the afternoon. And she said, "Hey Dad, can you help me get tickets to this concert tonight?" And I said, "Sure, no problem. Who is it and what arena?" I got friends in all the radio stations and TV stations, so I knew somebody could hook us up. Well, it turns out I was wrong. Tickets had been sold out. In fact, it was the fastest sellout in Orion history. So I told her, "Hey, sorry kid, there's no comps. Tickets are sold out. Is there anywhere we can still buy them?" And she found tickets that were for sale for $172, but with her back against the concrete, like the last row, the tippy top, the definition of a nosebleed seat. And I thought to myself, I know what to do. Don't be silly. Open up that Game Time app. I did, and I was blown away. Front row center for $200. For $26 more, my daughter didn't sit on the last row. She sat on the front row, and Game Time made me look like a super dad. And they can do it for you and your family too. They've got great last minute deals. Think about that. I bought this just hours before the event. The show was sold out. I didn't have to stress. I knew Game Time could hook me up. Not only that, they give you the Game Time guarantee, which is really amazing. It means you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. They're not going to make sure you get the best deal. They're going to make sure you get the best deal by at least 10%. You can't beat that. I can't even believe that this is real, but you can actually buy tickets at the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. So if it's a football game or a concert and maybe there's some openers, you can still get a hell of a deal with Game Time. These flash deals and sponsored deals aren't just for concerts, by the way. It's for football and basketball and baseball, concerts, comedy, theater. If there's tickets for it, Game Time's probably got it. And they eliminate the guesswork. We talked about the peace of mind with the Game Time guarantee. Well, you can actually see the perspective of your seats. You're not just looking at a seat map. You get to actually see what the stage or the ring or whatever is going to look like from your seat. You know exactly what you're getting before you buy, and then just 2 taps and boom, the tickets are in your phone. You don't have to dig through an email, none of that. And when I did this on my phone, all I had to do was a couple of taps and it transferred it directly to my daughter's phone. I didn't have to go to a box office. I didn't have to go meet her in person. The Game Time app did all the heavy lifting for me. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code WRESTLE. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code WRESTLE. That's WRESTLE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
What a great code that Wrestle is.
I love that code. It works on almost anything. So if you're listening to some of your other favorite podcasts and you forget what their code is, just always remember
Wrestle.
Ours is Wrestle. Fuck it. Give it a try.
Yeah. It's the big word on the logo.
Yes. There you go. Listen,
You don't have to spell it because some people spell it RASSLE.
I thought you were going to go do that world class.
RASSLI. Wait.
RASSLIN. That's wrestling.
That's wrestling. Yeah. For those of you that don't know what the hell we were just doing, throw your Google machine. Look it up, by God. Kids, it's that thing on your phone that you put in the search thing and you go RISSLIN. That's wrestling. Dallas, Texas. Wrestling. RASSLIN.
I hope.
I needed a hero.
I hope when we download the Von Erich movie, there's an extras like cutting room floor section and they recreated that. I need to see that.
Oh my God.
Hey, so listen, you come into the company in 87. The Hart Foundation had already won the titles in January of that year. And going back even further than that, Bret came into the World Wrestling Federation first, debuting in August of 84 as a babyface. His brother-in-law is going to follow a few months later, January of 85, as a heel managed by Mr. Fuji. But when Jimmy Hart comes up in February, he's paired with Neidhart and straight away as a singles. And then in April of 85, Bret turns heel. And all three cats are put together to form the Hart Foundation. If you're watching along with us on YouTube, you see that when Bret made his debut, they actually spelled his name on TV with 2 T's. Little trivia note there. What'd you think of this pairing the first time you saw them? I mean, I'm sure you had seen Jimmy Hart in the magazines, or maybe you managed to see some
Jimmy.
Okay. So
Jimmy from Memphis. Yeah.
So had you seen tape of him in Memphis, or how would you have seen the Memphis program where you were?
Tom worked Memphis.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So Tom had worked Memphis and I'd taken trips there and got to meet Jimmy there during the time when Andy Kaufman and Lawler had their, after when Kaufman was actually kind of working the territory.
Yeah.
And Tom was there working and went in, and Jimmy Hart was being Jimmy Hart. I met him way back then. Always, Jimmy Hart's one of those guys that I think was frozen in time and looks the same.
Still does.
The same.
Still does.
One of the genuinely nicest guys you will ever meet in your life. Whether he's known you for 100 years or he just met you, he's going to be the nicest, sharpest, greatest guy. Just never changes. And I love Jimmy Hart.
I want to mention too, if you have an opportunity to see Jimmy Hart in person at an appearance, a meet and greet, autograph session, a panel discussion, go out of your way to see him. And if you happen to be a promoter and you're not sure if you should book him, you should. I've had the pleasure of having Jimmy at a few of my events, and he would call me earlier in the morning, Bruce, and he would say, do you need me to come help set up chairs or greet people, or I'm just sitting in my room, I'm doing nothing. What can I do for you? Like, that's the type of guy Jimmy is, man.
Yeah. That's why you always book him. Cause you need one less chair setter upper.
Oh God. Will you stop?
What?
He's a legend. I didn't take him up on it, but the point is, there's no diva.
When he had his bar, my God, they had
beans and taters,
beer in cans. My
yes.
God.
Yes.
And that was the best. And what was his hit single?
Oh man, the
Keep on
Gentry's.
dancing.
Yes.
Gentry's. Keep on dancing. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is when you listen to the song by the Gentry's, Keep on Dancing, and you listen really hard, I swear you can pick out Jimmy's voice in that.
Well,
it is that distinct. And to this day, it comes on. and crank it up. 60s on 6, by God, on your XM dial.
I don't think we can play much more of it, but
No.
you can see if you Google that, you'll see Jimmy Hart without his
Hang on,
trademark
that's Guy calling.
sunglasses.
Yep. Hello. Oh, no.
Oh God, I have a joke right now that I want to tell, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep that between me and you. You know where I'm going. So listen, the first time you see them on camera together, I mean, I'm sure you had at least seen and heard about the Stampede territory, but this is probably the first time you see all three of these guys together on camera. And as I understand it, it takes a while for the team to really fully gel together. And Jimmy and he's the mouth of the South, so he's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting in the promos. Eventually Bret gets a little more comfortable in front of the camera and cutting promos, but these guys are still babies, when they're all put together in 85, right? I mean, they're very, very young.
Well, shit, man, we had Neidhart in Mid-South before that.
Right.
And you talk about a baby, he was a baby bull, and his promos were the shit. His work was brutal. But there was just something about him. He had that unspoken charisma and a natural animal magnetism that made people look, because he was unique and he was powerful as hell. So Jim had come through Mid-South and then went to New York and did the whole, pairing with Bret and everything. But I would always hear, for guys that you didn't know, and especially in those days when I was working in the Houston office with Paul Bosch, and Paul would have an anecdote for everything. And, that's probably where I picked it up, where everything has to have a story and an anecdote attached to it. And Bret Hart, when Bret first came on for WWE, was, Stu and Helen, he wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me, because Paul Bosch introduced Stu and Helen to each other. And the rest, as they say, is history. So you wouldn't have a Bret Hart or an Owen Hart or even probably even a Neidhart, because of the wrestling connection, if it wasn't for Paul Bosch.
It really is fun to go back and look at footage from this era, and I hope people do, because you can see the evolution of this tag team. Jimmy doing a lot of the promos, and then eventually Bret gets a little more comfortable, and slowly but surely they start to modify their gear. They start out in all black tights. They add a bunch of variations of colors, and then eventually they go all pink in late 86. And when Vince sees it, as the story goes, he tells them never change from that look. And I think that is actually pretty smart. I mean, these days I joke with my buddy Taz about how he thinks he owns the color orange, but really pink and black, when you think of those two colors, you definitely think of the Hart Foundation. Do you know it?
Yeah, they look great in it too.
Yeah.
I go way back, man. You look at all my karate stuff. I used to, wear man enough to wear pink and things of that nature. Because I first of all, pink's my favorite color. But so I was very partial to it, and it stood out because, especially as a heel, you're in pink and you're a tough guy.
Yes,
it's easy to jeer at someone, especially back in those days where pink wasn't a manly color, by God, and they made it work. And later on, Bret made it cool. So I think it was a great look for him.
It was a great look. And I think it's important, from a branding standpoint, we don't talk about things like this very often. We know the Nature Boy would switch out his robes. And of course, so would the Macho Man with the crazy hats and all that. But really the red and yellow deal, that's Hulk Hogan's, and the pink and black, that's the Hart Foundation. Like, there are certain branding elements that you become known for. This is like your signature. Like, that's important for establishing your character and your likeness for video games, for action figures, for posters, for foam fingers.
It's instant recognizability.
Yes.
That when you see that look, you could instantly identify with them because that's what you're familiar with. When you mess with that look a little bit, people have to look twice. And if they have to look twice, that's giving them an opportunity to look away. And you keep the same style, you keep the same colors, the same look, and people become familiar with it. And that's how they identify and recognize. So it's important.
The feud that is going to be the one a lot of people remember most is the Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation, really a legendary feud. And they're all from the Stampede territory by and large. Many of them trained by Stu Hart. I mean, this presentation, this really was like before there was an Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys or any of these great tag team rivalries that we would see throughout time in WWE, like Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation. That's the one I think of the most.
Yeah. And that's family too.
Yes.
Because you got Bulldog married to Diana.
Yes.
So again, they're all brother-in-laws, and, Dynamite really got his biggest break, I think, in Stampede, and got him over here, but he was a big star in Japan and obviously in the UK. But in my opinion, his first breakthrough performance was probably Calgary.
I want to ask you about Dynamite Kid, such a polarizing figure, but such an important figure in wrestling history, really ahead of his time. But he had a story where when his back was really done and he knew he was hurting pretty bad, Vince wanted them to drop the titles, the Bulldogs, that is, and he wanted them to drop it to Volkov and the Iron Sheik. But as the story goes, the Bulldogs refused and requested instead the Hart Foundation. Do you believe that story to be true?
I've never heard it, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, the match is sort of the impetus for Danny Davis to turn heel and go from being a referee to more of a wrestler. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about dangerous Danny Davis. What can you tell us about him?
Danny Davis was a referee. He was part of the ring crew from, upstate Massachusetts, and I think, or New Hampshire, but anyway, in the Northeast, one of the Yankee states up there.
Uh-huh.
And I guess I should say up here.
Yeah, that's where you live now.
That's where I'm doing the podcast from right now, Conrad. So, but Danny was part of the ring crew, and Danny was a referee. And, I don't even know if Danny had worked before. I would imagine he had, but I don't know. But they had this idea for a heel referee, and then your payoff for the heel referee is eventually you've got to get to him. So Danny ended up working. Danny wasn't a great worker, but Danny knew how to get heat, and Danny had heat everywhere he went. It was just, man, people wanted to see Danny Davis get his ass kicked, and he did it very well. So it was like, great guy. And it was somebody I think that Vince was happy to do something for and put him in that position to where it was like, here was a guy that is on the truck and he's ring crew and he's referee and he's there day in, day out, man, making the grind. And he gets an opportunity to live his dream and work. But not only that, to be in a position of, man, he was a big time heel. The audience hated his guts. That's a good thing.
Bret would write in his book, I looked down at my new belt, realizing what being a champion had cost Tom. I wondered what it would cost me. In that moment, I vowed never to forget that wrestling is a work, and I also vowed to pace myself for the long haul. I wanted to come out on the other end in one piece. That's directly from Bret's book, and what a statement it is. And of course, we know he too would have his career cut short due to injury. But do you think that was a cautionary tale? Dynamite Kid being injured so badly, beating himself up so badly, so young that he had to retire so young?
I think that's always been a cautionary tale for people. Old timers, whenever, every generation changes and every generation evolves. If you live and you stay in quote, your time or your heyday, you don't grow, man. You get old and you die. But unless you're evolving, changing with the times and continuing to grow, then it doesn't work. And I think a lot of the old timers would look at any of the new kids coming in and whatever they did. You keep doing that, kid, your career is not going to be too long. And in days past, you go back to the good old days of the 60s and the 70s and the 50s, before that, where guys didn't do a whole lot. And then you have these younger kids that they realize, well, when I take a bump, the crowd pops. So I get a reaction. That's a good thing. And if I take more bumps, I'll get more of a reaction. And they mistake that sometimes for getting over. And as the business evolves, you've got to change with it. And sometimes you've got to do more things, but there's ways to do it safely. There's ways to do things, to do more by doing less. So I think that was the precautionary tale. And no matter who you talk to from whatever generation, I think that a lot of the guys from yonder year look at talent and look at performers today and say, they're doing too much. And they are. There's a smart way to do it. And I think that's what Bret was kind of alluding to. There's a smart way to make this work and for it to all make sense and make my career just longer and not have to worry about my body breaking down in the process. And I think for the most part, I think Jim and Bret both were pretty good examples of that. Bret would ground you. Bret would set the pace and didn't do a lot of crazy stuff, but his work was exciting and it was still good because he did it when he needed to do it. And that's the key. And I think that's pretty much what he was saying there. Whereas, Dynamite, I think, took a lot of high risk and sometimes unnecessary high risk just for that holy shit moment. And the body only has so many holy shit moments in it. After a while, it's just like, oh shit. And it's all gone.
And sadly, that's not just true for us. It's also true for our pets, which is why you and I believe in Embrace Pet Insurance. And I know what you're thinking. Do I really need that? Well, I want to eliminate the opportunity for you to be in a bad spot. I talked about my daughter earlier today and her going to that concert. Well, she just lost her pet of 9 years. And unfortunately, there was nothing we could do. But there was a conversation right beforehand that was pretty uncomfortable. Hey, we could try this at $6,000 and there's no guarantee it'll work. It still might have the same result. What should we do? What a bad position that puts you in as a parent, as a pet owner. This is a loved one. This isn't just a dog. It's part of our family. And unfortunately, it didn't end well on our side. But I want you, when you're faced with that similar opportunity to do the right thing for your family member, you don't have to think twice because you've got Embrace Pet Insurance. I'm such a big believer in this because we just recently experienced it. And man, if you've got the love of an animal in your life, and I think everybody knows that I love my dogs, Ginger and Baby. And of course, Ginger's the official dog of Something to Wrestle. And we'll talk about that some other time, but we're trying to do the right thing by them. We're getting them, natural pet food, and we're doing pet sitting, and these costs can get out of hand. Well, pet insurance from Embrace is what you need. It's time to upgrade your pet insurance game. Whether you got a dog or a cat, Embrace Pet Insurance has customized plans for your pet's exact needs. And I'll tell you what, it's getting more expensive every year. Don't just take my word for it. Did you know that those costs are up 33% from 2022 to this year in 2023? 33%. But you don't have to worry with Embrace Pet Insurance. There you can visit any vet or emergency clinic. And if you're like me and you have multiple pets, you're even eligible for a 10% multi-pet discount. Plus, they've got a 24/7 helpline and optional wellness rewards. They're trying to make sure that you prioritize preventative care for your pet. So hopefully you never need Embrace Pet Insurance in the first place. But I got to tell you, I think this is necessary. I don't want you to be in the same spot that my family and my daughter was in with really hefty vet bills. And now you've got to think about yourself and the animal. That's terrible. Here's a real testimonial I found. Embrace made such a tremendous difference in my life. I could make decisions for my dog without thinking about my own needs. I could give him whatever the vet suggested he'd need, thinking only of how to best help him. And every part of this process was easy. From getting a pre-existing condition screening to making claims to being reimbursed. And every person I spoke to at Embrace was compassionate and professional. And my advice is to get coverage early and get it from Embrace. It was not just a good financial decision for us, but the most humane and caring one. So don't wait for the unexpected to happen. Join the massive community of pet owners who trust Embrace Pet Insurance to protect their pet. Head on over to embracepetiinsurance.com/wrestle and sign up for pet insurance today. Make sure to go to embracepetiinsurance.com/wrestle or else they won't know that I sent you. That's embracepetiinsurance.com/wrestle. So listen, the Danny Davis deal and the Hart Foundation winning the tag straps actually sets up the WrestleMania 3 match. It's the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis taking on the Bulldogs and Tito Santana. It's a 6-man match. It's going to be Danny Davis's first televised match. It's crazy that Dynamite Kid's actually able to make it, but WrestleMania payoff, you don't want to miss that. And the Big Rhino, Bret and Danny get the win. This had to be a pretty proud moment in the Hart family. Can you imagine how excited Stu was? See his boys out there working in front of 93,000 people. This is a big deal.
Yeah, to get the big, the fucking, the big Rhino and the Bret, the straight guy. I don't know who the fuck that is. He's a referee and the fucking thing. Yeah, I'm very excited.
WrestleMania 3 comes to an end, and here you are.
Looking there. You ever wrestle? You go back to the shot where the thing is already. You there, you big. Maybe you come down to the basement.
I'm gonna stay up here.
Yeah, you see your wrist there, big fella.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay up here.
That's it. Yeah. You look tough. Yeah.
No, thanks. I'll just be up here.
It's rude.
So listen, WrestleMania 3 comes
What
to
about
an
that
end.
silver fella?
No.
Take him and...
No.
Yeah.
I'm not going to advocate for that. I know how this ends.
Any of his relatives.
I'll stop now.
Thank you. So the Bulldogs get a rematch for the titles on Saturday night's main event. It's April 28th. You're there. It's one of your first big time tapings like this. And they're going to win the 2 out of 3 falls.
Where?
That's Saturday night's main event, April 28th.
Okay. Don't get hot.
The first fall was a DQ. So the Harts are going to keep the belts. Is this your first time working with these guys? I mean, I know you said that, you had met Jimmy before and Anvil had come through Mid-South, but is this your first time working with Bret here after WrestleMania?
Probably would
3?
have been the first time I met him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these two teams have an incredible feud over the spring and summer, bloody cage matches on the house shows, and the Harts are also going to defend against other great tag teams from the era, like the Killer Bees and the Rougeau brothers and the Can-Am Connections. And when Tom Zink and the Can-Am Connection quit the company, we need to find a new partner for Rick Martel. And later in August, that's when Martel is put with Tito Santana to form Strike Force. And this is just going to be another set of great matches. The Observer actually wrote, there was a famous match, but only in the city of Montreal during that period. The Hart Foundation defending the titles on August 10th, 1987 at the Forum in Montreal against the local heroes, Jacques and Raymond Rougeau. The finish of the match saw Jimmy Hart drop his megaphone. The Rougeaus got it and used it behind the ref's back and won the match and the titles. That night, on the biggest sports bulletin in TVA, it was announced that the Rougeaus had won the WWF World Tag Team titles. The next week, on local inserts for Montreal, Jack Tunney said the belts were being given back to the Hart Foundation due to use of the megaphone. At the political level,
can't do that, man. It's illegal in Montreal.
At the political level, the Americans didn't want French-Canadian babyface tag team champions, according to Raymond Rougeau. But, quote, Pat Patterson, who was booking at the time, thought that for Montreal, it would be good for us to win the titles. So they had to find a way that would allow us to win the titles in the province without having to lose them back in the U.S. And it was Pat who came up with that idea. Does that sound right to you? I know you were just getting started there, but does that ring a bell? Does that sound right?
That'd probably be something that they would come up with for Montreal, because things that happen in Montreal only happen in Montreal.
Yeah.
So It's kind of a, it's like the alternate universe,
Bizarro.
like Superman, Bizarro. That's
Yes.
what I was looking for. The Bizarro
Yeah.
world. Yes.
The Canadian piece.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Does it feel like to you that Canada became more important with the national expansion? I know it was always important, but
yeah, I think it always was important. And I think that, the development of the Canadian territories, Calgary was really the last one that they acquired. But, Canada's a big country and their fans are rabid there. I've said it many times. I wish that Americans were as patriotic as Canadians are about their country. And in spite of leadership or anything else, man, at least love your country and stand up and fight for your country. And Canadians will do that, man. And so I think that Canada was a very important part of the overall expansion. It did make it worldwide, even though it's across the border. And, we crossed the northern border that didn't cross the southern border because the money exchange and everything else wasn't the same. The economics weren't the same. And in Canada, it was a little bit easier to do. And again, you had a rabid fan base that had been built for many, many years.
we see Bret and Anvil get put into some pretty big time spots. They're going to have Mr. T be a guest enforcer working against the Young Stallions. They're a part of the finish, helping the Honky Tonk Man defeat Randy Savage and retain the Intercontinental title. Such a big moment in my fandom. And Hulk Hogan comes out for the save. They form the Mega Powers, and it's going to be Bret, Anvil, and Honky all taking bumps for them. I know that Hulk Hogan is the high watermark here, not just in the WWF, but in all of professional wrestling. So even in a tag team circumstance, this is a big deal for Bret and Anvil to be in there with Hogan, no?
Sure is. You're on national television as well. You're on broadcast national television. So that's an audience that you weren't normally exposed to. For the most part, syndication was early morning on the weekends. And now you're in a late night spot, but you're on NBC and you're broadcast everywhere for free, if you will. So yeah, and you're working with the number one attraction in the world, in the entire business. So yeah, it was a huge deal.
Eventually the Hart Foundation dropped the tag straps to Strikeforce. Martel is going to force Neidhart to submit to the Boston Crab. And of course, Anvil claims he never submitted, and that sets up the rematches. If you're watching along with us on YouTube, you see that iconic photo of them backstage with those title belts. And I love that look. You know, you would see that same main plate many times, for several more years here in the WWF, but the side plates would change, and these were actually nickel plated. They weren't just gold, but sort of squared off side plates, a lot of black paint. What did you think of these tag team belts? This is the Reggie Parks design, and it replaced the old shape, which also was a Reggie, but it was like almost like a 10 pounds of gold shape. Did you like the new tag team belts that they're sporting here?
I mean, they were okay, I guess. I was always a fan of, is it Kalmakoff?
Molkovich?
Molkovich.
Yes.
Yes. Molkovich. I really liked his work. I liked that style of championship. I liked some of Reggie's stuff. I like some of the stuff. I like the stuff that we had in Texas.
Yeah.
I also really liked the Japanese championships that like Baba and Saruta and those guys had. I like the 1960 early 70s NWA World Heavyweight Championship. I just thought the ornate and they look like championships versus a plate with some sketches on it. Shit. So I don't know. I was never that big of a fan of that style. I became a fan of the Intercontinental Championship. I didn't like it at first, but it grew on me after a while. Go back to, when they did the big gold And then every title after that was patterned after that, like the U.S. Championship. I hated that. I always thought that each championship should have its own unique style and look to it. And when everything just kind of looks the same, it's your TV title look the same. I don't know. I'm not a belt guy like you are. There's ones I really like, and then the rest of them are just not that crazy about them. I think the art form of giving someone the opportunity to create something unique.
Yeah.
That was gone because it became a template.
Yeah.
And I think that Reggie Parks was excellent at what he did, but then it became a template that was easy to copy for other people to copy. And they did.
But even that's probably because of the expansion, right? I mean, the WWF got so hot, everybody wanted their titles to look like those.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean, but it's, you go back and, I just liked them unique. And to that point, those tag team championships were unique. I just didn't really care for them.
Bret would write in his book that in this era, he would start drawing on the chalkboard these different funny cartoons. And this has become something that we've seen later in life. He's posted some on social media and things like that. But what do you remember seeing of these drawings? And had you ever seen anything like that before in a locker room or a backstage area in all your time in wrestling?
Not like that. No. And I think that, Bret's artistry, really came through, and it was a high point. You would come into the locker room and everybody would kind of gather around as Bret would create his art. You'd come in and out and see what Bret would create for the evening. Strongbow, Chief Jay Strongbow was often the foil in a lot of Bret's artwork. And that was always entertaining, especially if Chief was the agent producer for that evening. He would come in, what'd you do, Stu? Boy, that's real funny, Stu. And it always was. It was very entertaining. Probably couldn't share on social media these days, but they were always inside and extremely well done and extremely entertaining. And it kind of took the edge off when you're on the road. That you could think about, okay, when I get to the building tonight, what's Bret going to come up with tonight? And that was kind of Bret's way, I think, of relieving stress. But man, nobody was safe. Everybody would be a part of the caricature and everything from Vince all the way down, man. Nobody was safe. They all got put in the cartoons with Vince. So it was good stuff.
You actually interviewed the Hart Foundation at a WWF show in Houston on November 6th, where the Hart Foundation are going to challenge Strikeforce in Houston the following month. You're new to the territory here and trying some different roles out. Did it feel like to you that Bret and Anvil were getting more and more comfortable doing promos? Did you think they still needed Jimmy at that point?
No, I thought we all sucked.
Okay.
Probably except for Jimmy. I know I did. And I needed help bad. So when you're dealing with a Hulk or a Savage or even a Honky Tonk or DiBiase, it's easy. Ted DiBiase will be facing Hulk Hogan. Boom, and give him the microphone, and they carry the interview. And I had not really, I didn't have the skills. And man, I was so green at that point. I was wrapped up in my own head, thinking about play-by-play, which I did not do well. Now I'm going to go back to, I'd always done the interviews and stuff. I'd always done the market-specific stuff for Mid-South and UWF. This was different. This was an actual interview. I had to get things out of them, and it was like pulling teeth. Jimmy was great, and Jimmy would carry most of it. But as far as myself and Bret and Neidhart, yeah, we pretty much were the shits. It was a blind leading the blind. there. And I look back on that time, you asked me about that. I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I interviewed Bret and Neidhart. I try to forget some of those things because I was put in a position I wasn't ready for, didn't have the skill set to do. And just, you fake it till you make it, and just kept on doing what I was put in and until it went away. So I forgot I even did that with it.
Saturday night's main event comes around, and Bret has one of these big opportunities where maybe he's asked to fake it till he make it. It's not a tag affair. It's a big opportunity. It's a singles match against the Macho Man Randy Savage. And Bret wrote about this in his book. He said, on the afternoon of November 11th, we met and worked out a great match, but less than an hour before showtime, Vince summoned us to his office. He wanted a completely different match tied to a TV storyline around me working Randy's ankle. When I explained that working Randy's ankle would limit his mobility and take the speed out of the match, Vince cut me off. You're the great worker. Figure it out. This is a big vote of confidence from Vince. First of all, to have a tag wrestler in a singles match. Secondly, to have him in there with Randy Savage. Third, for it to be on Saturday night's main event on broadcast on NBC. And then maybe most importantly, hey, I want you guys to do something totally different, but you'll be fine. You're great. What a vote of confidence.
Well, you would hope so. They're professionals.
Yes.
You would hope they could go out and do their job.
Yes. Well, they did. And they did their job so well that Dave Meltzer would actually rave about Bret in The Observer.
God, I didn't know it was that bad.
Bret wrote, I worked hard in the Survivor Series and surprised myself being pleased that I got raves in the Wrestling Observer newsletter for being the best performer. Dave Meltzer wrote, Hart was fantastic. This was long before the internet, and the sheets were the way the fans and even promoters got their info about the business. But I had a problem with anyone who wasn't in the business writing about it as if they knew what they were talking about. I've always maintained that the only way to really know who is a great worker and who isn't is to have wrestled him. My attitude was that Meltzer and others were making a living off of other people's sweat and broken bones by exposing a business they really had no part of. But then I'd come home to my mom reading the sheets with Stu. Promoters were so tight-lipped that the only way anyone in the business could learn of anything else going on in the other territories, and sometimes even in their own territory, was from someone outside the business. That was the ultimate irony. Most wrestlers hated the sheets, but they were the first to flock around if someone brought one in the dressing room. I got to tell you, man, it's hard for me to imagine Stu Hart reading The Observer. Do you remember back in the day, guys gathering around and reading it in the locker room and passing it around and all that deal?
Sure. I remember, look, man, part of the reason that Bill Watts and UWF were praised so much, Watts called Meltzer, had conversations with him. And, in one breath, cussed him. Who's this stupid fucking Mark? He's an outsider talking about this shit. And on the other side, we'll talk to him.
Yeah.
Now, fed him a lot of shit.
Really?
And the fact that Bill talked to him, I think that helped Bill's reviews in The Observer. And without a doubt, I think that there were a lot of, that's the crazy thing, is that which I always, I laugh at. I'm guilty of it myself at times, where you read about something that you allegedly said and or did that you didn't.
Right.
It's made up and a lie and a tall tale that continues on. And you go, well, that's bullshit, because that didn't fucking happen. I was there. That's complete bullshit. But then you read something about somebody else in another territory or something else that happened. Oh, goddamn, can you believe that happened? When the answer is in the, can you believe that? In your question, man, because you realize that 90% of the things he's saying about you and your territory and things going on are untrue.
Right.
But you believe what he's saying about other territories and other places, that because you're not there, it's being reported on. Well, damn, can you believe that they're having this problem? Until you investigate more and find out, well, it's as untrue as everything else. So that's the irony of it. is that, you'll still have, people in the industry that will know that the reports on their stuff is not accurate, but the stuff that they said about that, because I don't like that, or I want that to be true, is true. And so you have to view it through the same lens. That's the important part that, sometimes we forget.
I want to ask you about something that we fans have heard a lot. Bret wrote in his book that Vince called him to tell him that he had been getting more fan mail than Hulk Hogan, and it was time to turn Bret babyface. Listen, I'm a huge Bret fan. I know that's been debated by people who listen to our show, but we do argue both sides of a lot of different points, but he was one of my favorites as a tag team performer, and certainly as an Intercontinental Champion early in my career, in my wrestling fandom. But the idea that he was getting, as a tag team wrestler, more fan mail than Hulk Hogan just seems, what? Like,
yeah,
I don't know that that's possible, right?
Yeah, I never heard that. I mean, I remember The Office where the fan mail came.
Right.
And, there were bags for Hulk and, bundles for everybody else. So I have no idea if he did that or not, but I never heard that.
It leads to a bit of a split with the Hart Foundation. And anytime there is a tag team split, you always wonder, hey, how's this going to go? How did Neidhart take trying things as a single again? Was he ready for that in this era, do you think? I know they're going to get back together, but before,
I think they were both ready for it, let me put it this way. I think they both wanted it.
Okay. That's what I meant.
From the standpoint of, boy, I'd like to be out on my own.
Right.
Versus being in a team. And I feel that I could be a bigger star on my own and what have you. But there's also there's a crutch, there's a safety blanket there with a tag team partner, especially one that is a member of your family that you travel with, that you work with, that, man, they were great. So you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you don't know if it's going to work or not. So there's that little bit of that, that double-edged sword. It's like, do I really want this or not? And I think that both guys were definitely ready to go out on their own. But I think there was also an unknown and a bit of just out of their comfort zone.
Well, and that's really what I meant. I didn't mean, are they able or capable of it? I just know that in this era, your payoffs are based on the houses and your spot on the card. And if you had success as a tag team act, breaking it up into a singles does represent some risk, right?
Yeah, but it also represents a higher reward as well.
Right. Well, let's talk about it. WrestleMania is going to happen in Atlantic City for WrestleMania 4. And that big battle royal comes down to Bret Hart and Bad News Brown. Brown gets the win. He's a damn dirty cheater. Bret smashes the trophy to a big babyface pop. You were there. This is your first WrestleMania. What'd you think of Bret and the tantrum and the trophy?
I think it goes back to the same thing. Like, I talk about what was a babyface then, what constituted a babyface then.
Yep.
And some people might look at that as, well, that's a sore loser. And it's pretty heelish, but yet the more of a heel you are, the bigger babyface reaction you're probably going to get. So I think everybody would want to do that and be able to smash a trophy and do that. But we were ready. Yeah, we were ready to try Bret on his own and felt that Bret would be a big single. He had a past with Bad News Brown from the Calgary territory when Bad News was there, Bad News Alan Quage. And it's like, all right, if he's going to succeed, let's put him right in there with Bad News and see what we've got, because Bad News really liked Bret too. And, the rest, as I say, is what it was.
And as you know, they all know each other from Stampede, and it winds up where Jim's sort of on the sidelines for some of this. Bret is going to be used to put Bad News over through a lot of the house shows. They're warming Bad News up for a series of matches with Hulk Hogan. So eventually they do put the team back together again, but this time without Jimmy Hart. And that means no Jimmy Hart, the Hart Foundation are baby faces. And the guys have said that this felt like one step backwards for them. But as a fan, I liked it. And, you know, hindsight being 2020, it's probably the right move, right?
Well, I think so for them. Yes. You know, Bret, we were looking at Bret being a baby face, and okay, maybe the single thing wasn't going to hit the way that we wanted it to at that point in time. And Neidhart was kind of floundering. There wasn't a whole lot for Jim. So putting them back together, you knew what that dynamic was.
Yes.
So putting them back is baby faces. And I'm pretty sure this is right about the time that they were working with the Rougeaus, because the first match that they had is a team, as a babyface team. I think my time frame's right, and I could be off here. Was with the Rougeaus, and Vince had booked for no reason. Brother Love is the guest referee. Other than I wanted to be out on the road and I wanted to do shit. Okay, I'll be guest referee of this match. And I remember having all these things in my head about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. For me, just thinking about my character, fuck them. So I've got all these spots, and I'd run the match by Vince and thrown out how I saw it. And he was like, "No, that's good. You go do it." And I want to say it was Boston was the first match, and I'm laying out the match to them, and as a heel, Brother Love, I was like, I'm going to cut you off every time that you start to do something. I'm going to step in and cut you off and allow the heels to regroup and or tag out or whatever it is on shit. And Bret's getting the hot tag in this match. And as soon as I make the hot tag, you start to make your comeback. I'm going to fucking stop you. Because it was building to a crescendo to where finally they've had enough and they get to me. And the match was built around them getting to me in the end. That I'm screwing them at every turn, that finally when they've had enough and they blow and they beat the shit out of me, and then that's finished. And Bret looks at me and he's like, "Oh, so let me get this straight. I'm making my first big babyface comeback, and you're going to cut me off?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He thinks about it for a minute. Like, "Yeah, I don't think that's going to work." I'm like, "But Bret, you're going to kill me in the end. I mean, your comeback is going to be on both of them and me. And that's the big finish. And you guys get to me, and then fucking boom, and we do the finish, and we're out of there. And you guys stand tall, and we fucking powder, and they carry me out." And he's like, "Well, let's just call it out there and see how it goes." Bret was getting his goddamn babyface finish in.
I love it.
It come hell or high water. But it was fun, man. And I loved working with those guys. I'll never forget. And again, I'm pretty sure it was Boston. Jacques had Jim in a rear, like a camel clutch type, without on the knees and shit. And Jim is looking up, and his eyes are looking around, and he looks at me and says, "Move." And I moved, and I went back, and as I did that, an ice pick, an actual ice pick, had flown in the ring and stuck right in the mat.
Holy shit.
I'm like, "Thank you." And kicked it out, and we continued on. But that, yeah, I mean, it was just that close and just stuck right there. And I was on all fours, like right in his face. And he's looking around. He's like, "Move." Well, okay. I moved. And I'm thinking he's trying to get out. And yeah, he pretty much saved me from an ice pick in my eye. My eye. God, there's an ice pick in my eye. And then every night they would give me their finish, and we got the hell out of Dodge. But I loved it, man. I loved working with those guys. It was a lot of fun. Short-lived, and there was no reason for it other than special attraction. Brother Love is referee.
The story is Jimmy Hart is claiming that he owns half of the Hart Foundation contract, and he's going to give that half to the Rougeaus. So every time the Hart Foundation wrestles, the Rougeaus get half of the purse. Pretty fun. Maybe
that's true though.
Oh, yeah.
That actually happened.
Let me tell you what is true. If you find yourself feeling like you have an ice pick in the eye and you can't sleep, our friends at The Amazing Kind can help. The founder of this used to work in the wrestling business. In fact, he was a producer and editor at the WWE. He worked on commercials and marketing, and now he's got infused oils here at The Amazing Kind. They're made from all natural sun-grown hemp and infused with nutrient-dense MCT oil. Not just that, The Amazing Kind has a wide range of high-quality topical balms and creams and gels for muscles and joint relief. But the infused oils and soft gels for mood support and sleep, man, that's what's really been helping my household. Our daughter Morgan came home from college and visited, and she had been having some trouble sleeping. We knew exactly what to do. TheAmazingKind.com can hook you up, and you'll get 20% off all your orders with the promo code WRESTLE. Your body will thank you, because The Amazing Kind is plant-based pain relief balms, creams, and gels. But those infused oils, man, whew, great for your mood, great for sleep. It's just a little couple of drops under your tongue, and bam, you're good to go. I should mention that these sedative effects with CBN, that's what really brings over that state of relaxation and calmness. It's going to help you create the environment that's conducive for falling asleep easier. Not only that, but you're going to have more prolonged sleep. A lot of users have reported a more restful and rejuvenating sleep experience with these infused oils. CBN will also help you reduce your nighttime awakenings. If you're tossing and turning and up and down throughout the night, and you're not really getting the quality sleep you need, you're going to feel like crap the next day. Get ahead of it with The Amazing Kind. If you're one of those folks who are struggling with insomnia, maybe you've got some chronic pain that makes it difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep, I highly recommend this. And there's a lot of research out there and some studies that are suggesting that CBN could be useful for improving that sleep quality and addressing most of your sleep-related issues. I'm a big believer in this. I know you've tried it. What's your experience been like with TheAmazingKind.com, Bruce?
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's one thing that it helps you get to sleep, but the other thing is it helps you stay asleep. As you know, I'm an insomniac, and we do use these products, and these products are absolutely wonderful. And for those of you that have trouble getting to sleep and staying asleep, give it a try, because I'm here to tell you it works.
Use that promo code WRESTLE right now at theamazingkind.com. Yeah, that promo code WRESTLE. It's right there. It's going to hook you up, save you 20%, help you get to sleep. And listen, let's just be honest. This is a guy who is a wrestling fan like me and you. He listens to this show. Support our show and support those who listen to our show and support our show, and get a great deal too, and some better sleep at theamazingkind.com. Use that promo code WRESTLE. You're going to save some money and get a good night's sleep.
It's worth it.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Jimmy Hart and Neidhart. They're going to have some singles matches with Rick Rude, or Neidhart does. And Bret would write in his book that at times Jim could be his own worst enemy. Could you elaborate on that? Like, I know that everybody listening to this is a Neidhart fan and loves this presentation, and he has that iconic look and that iconic laugh and the legacy that he's got now with Natty, who's going to break all the records for WWE for longevity. I mean, what a career she's had. But for Bret to write, he's his own worst enemy. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that sometimes, look, Jim was Jim. And when I say that is sometimes demons would arise that would take Jim in directions that probably weren't the best for his professional and or personal life. And that's what he means. Whereas Jim would let outside influences kind of mess with him that would upset his professional life. And it's just, sometimes that's the way it be sometimes. And Jim could let that happen an awful lot, whereas he would have an opportunity, and instead of embracing that opportunity and making the most out of it, would kind of work against it. And okay, well, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to go out and do a shitty job. Instead of, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to go out and do it so I can get something better.
Right.
And I think that's more the attitude than anything.
Around this same time, Owen would join the WWF. And as I understand it, he's going to start traveling with Jim and Bret on the road. I don't know why, man, but that feels like the most fun car ride possible. I mean, with Owen being known for his pranks and Jim's personality, that just feels like that would have been a lot of fun. Did you spend any time with that trio together?
I mean, probably not really officially, but well, they were there, and Owen coming in at that time. I think, when Owen came in, Owen was coming over from Otto Vaughn's territory when he first came to work with us. And there were such high expectations from the tapes we had from Japan and this amazing athlete. And that's everything that Owen was. The problem was, I think, that people all too often looked at Owen as Bret's little brother. Yeah, that's the younger Hart. And, it took until the split with Bret and that story before people really realized just how talented and how great Owen was. It was there all along. It was one of those situations kind of where a guy is really entertaining in the back, but couldn't do it on camera. Owen was extremely entertaining in the back, and he could do it on camera. He just never got the opportunity to until much later. So it was, quite a crew. Quite a crew. I imagine there were a few ribs pulled in that car and that trio.
One of the things that's not a rib is the Hart Foundation theme song. They're going to get a new version of the song, the version that you're probably most familiar with as Bret Hart's theme song. This was a tremendous theme song, still is a great theme song, but I felt like it added a lot to the presentation. I mean, they had the team look for a while with the color scheme and all that, but this song, man, this just becomes synonymous with them for the rest of their career, no?
Yeah, it's kind of the frenetic energy. I compare it to Ultimate Warrior's theme song, which you hear that beat and you hear that frenetic energy. The Hart Foundation had that same thing. As soon as you heard that chord and you got, it was a frenetic energy that was associated strictly with them. And, when you hear it, you always just see Bret coming out, with the arms out and moving to the music, if you will. So very identifiable. And to this day is a signature.
I think it's one of the better songs of the era. I mean,
yeah.
Jimmy Hart is one of the guys who put that one together. Surprise, surprise. At SummerSlam, the Hart Foundation are going to lose to Demolition after Jimmy Hart's megaphone helps defeat his former team. The Harts are being programmed with Jimmy as sort of their main antagonist. And at WrestleMania 5, it's the Hart Foundation taking on Honky Tonk and Greg Valentine. Not yet Rhythm and Blues. And Bret would be working with Honky Tonk Man, and unfortunately didn't have the best things to say about him in his book. He wrote, "With his skinny arms and bandy legs, Honky's punches and kicks looked like they couldn't break an egg. He was just so damn phony. The old school boys who prided themselves on realistic matches had all but been eradicated." Do you think this was I think there was a Memphis bias. Do you think this is part of that, or is this more specific to Honky?
I think there's a little bit of Memphis bias to that, but regardless, Honky Tonk Man was the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. And Honky Tonk Man was a great entertainer. And Honky was able to go out and tell a story and get great heat. Nobody's saying that Hulk Hogan was the greatest worker in the world. But you know what? He drew money. Honky Tonk had heat, and Honky Tonk could draw money. And Honky Tonk delivered in making you hate his guts and wanting to see him get his ass kicked. He wasn't there to pose. Honky wasn't there to have a great body and do all that. Honky was there to entertain you and tell you a story.
Bret would move on and get to work with Andre in Italy, as the usual European tour after WrestleMania was standard even back then. What do you think Andre thought about the Hart Foundation, Bret and Anvil?
I think he liked both of them. I think that Andre was big fans of both Bret and Jim. You know, he was very good friends with Stu and always went into Calgary and worked that territory for Stu. But I think that pretty much Andre was one of the family. Probably loved it.
The Hart Foundation sort of go their separate ways again for a bit here. Bret starts wrestling Mr. Perfect. Neidhart is working house show matches against Warlord or Barbarian. Why the stop and starts with the tag teams? Just switching it up for house shows, or is there another strategy here?
Again, you're trying to see if there is actually going to be a breakthrough here with one of them as a single. Well, try it out. That was the idea, you know, as far as booking them apart. Let's see what they can do and see if there is going to be that spark that we make. No mistake about it. The focus was probably on Bret. It was on Bret to be a breakout babyface on that side. But, you know, with Jim, the idea was, you know, you're looking at Jim, and Jim could have been a great character babyface. I mean, that face just lends itself. You know, how can you be mad at that?
Right.
And he has the beard, and he's stroking the beard, and it was, what's there not to like? He was entertaining, and he was a bull, but I think that it was trying to lean more into being a character babyface, a Hacksaw Jim Duggan type character with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Be Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Be the Anvil. And that was the goal.
We know they come back together to take on the Rockers. This has to be a challenge. Two babyface tag teams against each other. I'm not a wrestler, don't pretend to be a wrestler, but that has to present a new specific set of challenges. It feels like a lot of, you know, babyface and heel tag team matches. The formula you can sort of predict at times about the story they're going to try to tell. But with two babyface teams, is that a lot harder, do you think?
Not with two teams like that, no.
Right.
I think that the chemistry that Sean and Marty had with Bret and Anvil was gold. It was instant. Sometimes it takes a while for guys' styles to mesh and to really have that chemistry. In my opinion, from day one when they met, they had that chemistry. It was instantaneous, and it was enjoyable to watch. You got lost in the match versus a heel and a babyface. It was spectacular, and it wasn't a hokey babyface match. It was two exciting teams going out there and having a hell of a match. Two different styles, and I thought they gelled awesome together, man. It was some of the greatest matches. You know, you go back in those times and you were able to place the Rockers with anybody. You put Rockers with Warlord and Barbarian, and they would tear the house down. You could put Bret and Jim, same team, and tear the house down. There wasn't a team that they didn't have great matches with. So put them together, and you've got sometimes what you think is going to be great when you put the two great ones together is not that great. And in this instance, it was. They made magic together.
They wind up taking on the Brainbusters at SummerSlam. It's a non-title match. It's one of my favorite tag team matches. You and I actually watched this in my house a few years ago. Just a phenomenal match. Looking back, I can't help but think about what a great long-term program this could have been. If you're going to watch a tag match, this is probably about as good as it's going to get. Go out of your way to watch it. SummerSlam 89, the Hart Foundation against Arn and Tully. Survivor Series in 89 is quite interesting. Bret's on a team with Hacksaw Jim Duggan's 4x4 team. He's with Hercules and Ronnie Garvin, losing to Randy Savage's King's Court team with Greg Valentine, Dino Bravo, and Earthquake. Meanwhile, Neidhart is on the Ultimate Warriors team with the Rockers. Warrior winds up being the sole survivor against the Heenan family. I only bring this up because they're a tag team, but they're on different teams. Most of the other tag teams were together. You're really trying this as a split, huh?
Trying?
Yeah.
Not successful, but trying.
I don't know if everybody was thrilled with their position, because at the time, Bret would write in his book, he went to see Vince to discuss money. And basically Vince told him if he wasn't happy, he should go somewhere else. Do you think that was just the state of the business at the time and the nature of the beast? Or is this one of those stories we've heard about where you got to sort of pick your timing with Vince? You got to know when's a good time and when's maybe not such a good time.
Well, I mean, that's with life in general. You need to pick your spots. And I think that in general, if you're unhappy, and, Vince would have his moments where, you know what, if you're unhappy, you want to leave, get out.
Right.
Leave. So that may have been it. That may have been just one of those moments where, well, pal, you're going to go somewhere else. Go make more money elsewhere. Where are you going to do that? And there wasn't a lot of choices in where you could make that kind of money. You could go work a lot of different places, but to make the kind of money that he was making, I don't think that was the case. And again, sometimes it is the day, and sometimes it's how you ask.
Right.
As well.
JR used to say, converse, don't confront.
Mm-hmm.
Bret would go on to write that he actually called WCW. So when Vince says, if you're not happy, go somewhere else, Bret says, okay. And he calls Ric Flair, who was the booker at the time for Ted Turner's WCW, and almost immediately offers him a $200,000 a year contract. But as it turns out, Flair was not authorized to do that. And eventually Jim Barnett offers Bret $156,000 instead. And that was the end of that. Do you remember hearing about Bret here in 1989? I mean, before the Intercontinental title run or any of that stuff, reaching out to WCW, or is this news to you?
But I think a lot of guys were, and that was definitely long before, guaranteed contracts.
Right.
So to go and do that, I first of all, I don't doubt that he called and that they made offers and things of that nature at all. I think a lot of guys were doing that during that time. And it was the nature of the beast. You're always looking for greener pastures.
At WrestleMania, we see Bret and Neidhart beat the Bolsheviks. It takes them all of 18 seconds. I'm sure they're happy to be on the show, but this has to be kind of frustrating for Bret. He wanted to perform, and it leads to SummerSlam, where the Hart Foundation are going to challenge Demolition. This time it's Bryan Adams, who's wrestling as Crush, Barry Darsow as Smash. They're going to be in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag team titles, and the LOD, Road Warrior Hawk and Animal, are going to help the Hart Foundation get the win and the titles, even though one of the falls was by DQ, but whatever. We got the belts off of them, and Bret and the Anvil are tag champs once again. And it's reported in October that Vince actually called a meeting for the Hart Foundation, but Jim is told to wait outside while Vince talks to Bret. Here's what Bret said about the meeting. The first thing he said was, Bret, we're going with you in a singles. With the tag belt, I thought I had a rock solid position, but now everything was uncertain again. Quote, this is going to be the big push, he said. The real push, the one I've always promised you, the one you've been waiting for, the one you deserve. You'll be involved in all the major angles with all the top men. And it's not going to be like all those other times where we didn't come through. The plans I have for you are bigger than anything you could have imagined. Again, big Bret fan. It's hard for me to see Vince saying that word for word. And I get that he's paraphrasing, but
he's definitely paraphrasing. Yeah. Again, that's not Vince speak,
right?
I could see him saying, hey, we're looking to go with you as a single and looking to go all the way, and very vague, terms, but to be that specific, I don't know that to be the case.
Bret wrote
in the room, so I wasn't there.
I wasn't there. Bret wrote in his book, what about Jim? And Vince's face grew serious. I'll be letting 17 guys go today, and Jim's not one of them. I'm thinking I'll try him at the announcing table for a while, putting him on salary with a pension and full company benefits. I can't let him go. He owes me a lot of money from all his legal fees," end quote. Vince's plan was that the foundation would drop the belts to the Rockers at the next set of TVs, where they'd also be taping Saturday night's main event. And when I left the room, Jim looked like a prisoner preparing to see the warden. Afterwards, he did his best to appear upbeat, but it was easy to see he was devastated. At least he had his ongoing countersuit against US Air and the hope of an eventual settlement. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about this, but can we talk about Neidhart's legal troubles here, where he had Vince bail him out, I suppose?
I don't think Vince bailed him out. They just sent him to Kirkpatrick and Lockhart. I don't even, I know there was the lawsuit and Jim won, but I don't really even remember the details about that thing. I know that's where Jerry McDevitt came from. And
it was that case with Anvil, right?
It was that case with Anvil.
Yeah.
Because it was Pittsburgh, US Air was in Pittsburgh. And so they were looking for a local attorney to try the case. And that's where they found Jerry, and Neidhart, should be very grateful, to Jerry McDevitt.
Yeah.
But the other thing about that, and again, it's people take things literal and things. First of all, Jim was never going to be an employee. He was an independent contractor, and there was no pension. There was no benefits. That part was, those are words that would never, ever come out of Vince's mouth. So yes, there was during that time that we were looking at Jim being a color commentator. And I think we were going to have him work with Monsoon. And eventually he did. We did try it out for a while, but just didn't work out.
Do you recall hearing what happened on the plane with Neidhart?
I don't remember, man.
Yeah.
I really don't remember.
Well, I'm glad he didn't get cut and he kept his gig. Let's talk about the famed match that never really aired. It happens in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You heard Bret talk about it. He's supposed to drop the tag straps to the Rockers. Bret would write, "What started out as a terrific match snowballed into a colossal clusterfuck after Jim accidentally broke the top rope. The match was taped and could easily be edited, but the ref, Freddie Sparta, couldn't figure out that he needed to temporarily stop the bout and fix the rope, even though I explained it to him." Are you at this set of tapings? What's it like backstage? How chaotic is this?
No, I definitely was there, and top rope broke, and it was a situation where trying to get word, to everybody and fix the fucking top rope.
Right.
But the guys, so, I came from Texas. All right. Whereas if the top rope broke in the middle of a match, the match continued, and you had a bunch of guys that would get up there and loosen all the turnbuckles on each corner and reattach the rope and tighten everything up while the match is going on. Or the guys would go right into a finish, and then you fix the ring. In this case, because it was TV and it was tape, easily could have stopped the match and fixed the rope. But there was I think the ring crew was afraid to go in and do anything. And I think people panicked and just tried to finish the match with no top rope. And it was horrible. Didn't work.
How do you guys decide, and who ultimately makes the call?
I guess Vince did. I really don't know, other than the match sucked. You couldn't air it the way it was because they were just trying to make do. And I think the finish was something coming off the top rope, and they just went into a bullshit finish, and it was like, I don't want to drop the titles that way. So it didn't happen.
Do you think that, once upon a time you would have just redone that somewhere else?
Sure.
Do you think at this point it would have felt like exposing the business to redo it, or no?
No, I really don't. I can't answer that question. I don't know. To this day, I don't know why. To me, it was such an easy fix. It's like, fix it, fix the rope, finish the match, edit it together as if it never happened. That didn't happen. And I think it was a lot of people just kind of getting back together and thinking, oh, we can make it work. Then you get back and you can't edit it and make it work. And so it didn't happen. Next. I still don't understand why we didn't go back and just drop the titles of the Rockers somewhere else.
It would have been fun.
So I couldn't tell you the rationale behind that. I wasn't privy to it other than because that was my thing. I just leave it as it is.
We do wind up getting a bit of a reprieve for Jim Neidhart though, because he comes back to the company because, well, he's still a tag champ and that tag switch never happened. Do you think Stu made a call to Vince for that one or no?
No, I don't.
Just happened that
I just
way.
think it just happened.
Well, the team is sort of limping along here. We get to WrestleMania 7 in Los Angeles. The Nasty Boys, with the help of Jimmy Hart again, defeat the Hart Foundation to win the tag team titles. Kind of wish that would have been the Rockers, but why the Nasty Boys? I love the Nasty Boys, but why the Nasty Boys and not the Rockers?
They were new and they were heels and you had Jimmy Hart in the corner. So it was a little more logical versus, the Babyface match and Babyface switch with the Rockers. So you had nasty, the nasty heels, the Nasty Boys with Jimmy Hart, and it was just a better story.
They do have a couple more team matches as a team, including that WrestleFest show over in Japan, where it's a joint opportunity. They're going to open the show and defeat the Rockers, and also Power and Glory over in England. And finally, Demolition at Wembley Arena. And the final match of Bret and Jim as a tag team airs on Primetime Wrestling. It's taped in the Garden, and the Nasties are going to defeat them again with the help of Jimmy Hart. A 6-year run here for the Hart Foundation. We know what is due for Bret. At the time, did you see that for Bret? And what did you see for Anvil?
I think everybody saw that for Bret. And I think that there was still hope for Anvil to be that character babyface. But at the same time, I think that there was also a thought and a mindset of you're not going to get one over with the other one in the same space.
Right.
Because you're always going to go back to, the Hart Foundation. They were... that's what they were, and that's how people saw them. And if you have them apart, but yet they're still in the same vicinity of one another, it's just a little tough to fathom.
We know Bret goes on to win the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam that year in Madison Square Garden with Stu and Helen in the crowd. Jim is going to become a color commentator for a bit. We know that Stu has a great relationship with Vince as well. I mean, it is a family affair, the Harts and the WWF, and Jim would actually be managed by Andre the Giant in some matches, working against Earthquake before coming off of commentary. And he spends the rest of the year in matches against IRS and even works the Nature Boy, losing to the Figure 4. Flair would put him on him twice afterwards, that Figure 4, forcing Neidhart to be walked to the back. And there he's going to be jumped by the Beverly Brothers, and that takes him out of the Survivor Series. And this leads to Owen and Neidhart forming the new Hart Foundation. And we've talked about it a few times on the show here before. When we get things like the new Rockers and the new Midnight Express, it doesn't really always work out the best, but the new Hart Foundation, I kind of liked Owen and Neidhart. What'd you think?
Oh, I think that was the best chance of survival at that point. The outfits were a little crazy. Didn't always like them, but that was the new young hip thing, I guess, to look like a taxi cab.
Well, the new hip thing I want to tell you about is an amazing new app called Vita. They've created a new form of advertising that eliminates spam and allows everyone to get paid for their time and attention. You simply go to Vita.io to download the Vita app and select a free second phone number, so you no longer have to worry about giving away your personal number. When a telemarketer calls your Vita number, they'll need to pay to get their message through. And the best part is the app is completely free. Brands are finally realizing the value of rewarding their customers for their time and attention. And our new sponsor, Crowd Health, is using it. And it's not only a fun way to support the show, but you can also earn some money in the process. So please try it out today by downloading the app at vida.io or by calling 509-WRESTLE and following the link. That's 509-973-7853 and help support the show. Call now and you'll earn your first $1 just for downloading. That's vida.io or call 509-WRESTLE. That's 509-WRESTLE and you'll earn your first $1 for just downloading. So you come back to the WWF in 1992 after a brief hiatus, I guess we'll call it. But the rumor and innuendo is that Jim Neidhart was fired for refusing to take a drug test. Did you heard that?
I don't really recall.
You're not on the witness stand. You don't have to say that.
I don't remember.
In 1994, we know Bret and Owen team up and they're doing this to set up the breakup and the heel turn for Owen. But they were never actually referred to as the Hart Foundation. We had seen, Jimmy and Jim and Bret as the Hart Foundation, and then just Jimmy and Bret as the Hart Foundation, and then Owen and Jim as the Hart Foundation. Why don't you think you called Owen and Bret the Hart Foundation?
I don't know. I think maybe at that point, Bret had been a single.
Yeah.
So the Hart Foundation was always Jim. I don't know. I think in hindsight, as I look at it, I think I probably would have brought him down because it would have been compared to.
I see.
So you don't want to compare back to Jim. You want something new with Owen to get where we wanted to go.
When Neidhart returns in 94, he's going to turn on Bret and side with Owen. And the scene at the end of SummerSlam 94, not the Taker Faker match, but the end of the cage match with Neidhart and Owen beating on Bret while Davey Boy and the rest of the Hart family couldn't get in. I could argue that should have, that should have closed the show to me. What say you?
I say that they shouldn't have gone 20 minutes heavy and that Taker should have closed the show.
Okay. You got to get hot about it.
I do get hot about it.
Bret has said in the past that there was a plan to put the tag titles on Owen and Neidhart in the tag team tournament instead of 1, 2, 3 Kid and Sparky Plug. Is that right? You ever hear that? Or is that just,
No.
Okay. We know that Jim gets released again. And I think allegedly here it's because of missing some shots. Was reliability an issue in this era for Jim?
Reliability, yeah, it became an issue. And I think that, again, as I said, with Jim and his demons would sometimes get a hold of him. And whether it was missing shows or showing up, not ready to work, unfortunately that happens. So you got to part ways.
Jim comes back to the company as who in 1996 for 3 months before the Hart Foundation reunites in 1997 as a stable. We've covered all that and more in our archives over at somethingtowrestle.com. So be sure to check them out. Bruce, one of my favorite tag teams, maybe the tag team I find most identifiable as my first WWF tag team. What do you think their legacy will be? Top 5?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy them more as baby faces or heels?
I enjoyed them more as heels.
Okay.
It was just look, man, you had the greasy Bret Hart with the greasy hair, and then you had the loud Neidhart. You had the little whiny, mousy manager. They were perfect heels, and they were such good workers. They were such a great tag team that, you remember them because they were great. And that's, where it all comes together. So yeah, man, I thought they were fabulous. Not Fabulous Rougeos, but the Hart Foundation.
I got to tell you, I really love this tag team, and I've always thought it was maybe a little unfair. And we've talked about this before with like Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero, where Chavo was so good, but because he was so often paired with Eddie in WCW, people would make comparisons. And I really love Bret Hart's work and body work. And I think everybody listening to this does, but in a weird way, it almost at times was like it might be a disservice for Anvil. Like we just sort of look past Anvil, but he was such a great part of that tag team. And that tag team would not have been the same. Like Bret had other tag team partners and random iterations over the years, but I always preferred him with Anvil.
But nothing compared to him and Anvil. And again, because of that chemistry, they were family, it worked. And a lot of times when you split up tag teams, maybe only one of them is going to survive. But initially, there's a time you get so used to working in a tag team. You have time to rest on the apron. It's a completely different mindset than being a single. And when you're now taken out of that tag team, you don't realize that, hey, there was a crutch there for a while.
Yeah.
I had somebody I could play off of. Now you're out there and you're in the spotlight all by yourself. And it's a completely different dynamic. And sometimes people thrive and sometimes they don't.
I just want to give a shout out one more time to the Anvil, because I think if you go back and you look at some of their early promos, like, we know that Bret was the great technician, but Jim was the character of that group.
Yeah.
With the crazy laugh and the crazy goatee and pulling it and just his manic mannerisms. He was the character of that. I mean, take a look at the photo if you're watching along with us. Like, Bret's cocky heel, but I mean, you saw a lot of those. I mean, respectfully, Anvil was unique. He was the character. He was the sauce. He was the seasoning of this tag team.
Yes.
And I hope that folks listening to this will give Neidhart his flowers, because, you know, I know he's paired with one of the all-time greats, but just like,
look, you don't have a Hart Foundation. You had the Hart and Bret Hart, and you had the Foundation and Neidhart.
yes. And I feel the same way about like Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. Like, everybody always talks about Ric Flair, but you go back and you watch Arn stuff. I mean, Arn was just fantastic. I think Anvil might just be Bret's Arn, and man, there's nothing wrong with that. We got a bunch of great questions. I don't think we'll get to them all. Let's hit a few here. Drew Landry wants to know, do you think this team's best match was with Demolition at SummerSlam 1990?
I think that their best matches were actually with the Rockers.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of those weren't televised or on pay-per-views or anything like that, but having the opportunity to see those a lot, their best matches were with the Rockers.
Michael wanted to know, what would you say is the defining feud the Hart Foundation had as a tag team? You're going Rockers for that?
Well, I think as far as rivalries go, probably either Demolition or the Rougeaus.
Okay.
Just because there was some meat to it, and,
yes,
and it got TV time.
James has a great question. We know that the Blue Blazer is going to show up in the late 80s. Was there ever any talk of adding Owen Hart to the team in the late 80s and early 90s? So we established that, you know, Owen's going to start riding with them in real life, and we would see that, you know, Demolition had Axe, Smash, and Crush, and I think that could have been a fun dynamic to think about Owen as a part of that presentation as well. What say you?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because it would have brought him down and would have brought them down. And any opportunity for Owen to get over as a single would have been crushed in that shadow.
Great question here from Andy Goldsmith. Was it ever pitched to have Neidhart challenge Bret for the title, whether Intercontinental or World? You know, most of the time, you take a look at, say, when the Rockers split, we did get to see Shawn versus Marty. We never really got to see Neidhart and Bret. Why not?
You know, it was during a time Jim wasn't with the company, and I don't think there was that confidence in that. I don't even remember ever talking about it.
Wrestling Archive has an interesting question. Was there any heat between the Rockers and the Hart Foundation because of the Phantom title change? Do you think there were any hurt feelings on the Rocker side on that deal?
I don't think so. I think, you know, on both sides, I think both sides kind of felt like, well, this is the shits. So I don't think there was heat at all with the teams. I think it was an unfortunate situation that happened, and it was what it was. It didn't hurt anybody. You know, in the process, to the contrary, with Jim, it kept Jim on the road and kept him on the roster longer than he was destined for.
Ghost Queen wants to know, did anyone ever try to convince Bret to grow a goatee like Anvil? And did anyone ever try to convince Anvil to shave it or pull a rib with attempting to shave the goatee?
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I don't know if Bret could grow a goatee like that.
Not many people.
You know, I almost had one for a while where all I did was grow a goatee. And it was, when I first met you, did I have the goatee?
Not like that. You did have a goatee, but not like no length.
No, but this one had length.
Can you post a picture of that or send it to us? So
I only, you know what? Well, I'll take that back. I only have one really decent picture of it because I just didn't. It was during my I don't give a shit time in my life.
I have it on good authority. That's been 32 years now.
Been longer than that. But there was a time where I really didn't give a shit. Yeah.
Them Graphics wants to know, which tag team scene did Bruce enjoy more? The era of the Harts, Rockers, Demolition, Bulldogs, etc., or the 2000s era of Edge and Christian, Hardys, Dudleys, APA, etc.?
I enjoyed them both. The only thing is they're different. You know, it was just a different time and a different era and a different style. I liked them both. I thought they were both really good times. And in that list is great tag teams all the way through.
Kevin Lambert wants to know, what's the story behind the Who character?
Who?
I love you for that. RCS 88 wants to know, had the Road Warriors not come in 1990, were the Hart Foundation supposed to turn heel again and join back up with Jimmy Hart to feud with Demolition?
Not to my knowledge. And again, that's one of those hypothetical what ifs that you really don't contemplate because you had the Legion of Doom coming in. So it's like, okay, you know, it wasn't thought of because that's what you had. So there wasn't if they don't come in at this point, when you haven't planned and they don't come in, then you make the adjustment. I don't think there's it's a lot of wasted time and energy to sit there and go, okay, well, this happens. Well, if this happens, you play what ifs, but that's just not an exercise that we did.
Naked Mind Yoga plus Pilates is a brand new fitness and wellness studio owned and founded by Brandi Rhodes. The physical studio in Roswell, Georgia offers yoga and Pilates reformer classes, plus childcare for clients all under one roof. That is truly unique. And it makes Naked Mind the only yoga or Pilates studio of its kind in the entire Atlanta area. For those of you who aren't local to the Atlanta area, Naked Mind has an app. You can get moving with yoga and mat Pilates classes led by Brandi and a hand-picked group of established yoga and Pilates instructors. It's a fantastic way to try yoga and get into a new fitness and wellness program. Yoga is good for the mind and the body, making it one of the leading wellness practices in the world today. You can find the Naked Mind app on Apple and Android devices and enjoy $10 off your first month or retail when you use the code CONRAD10. Naked Mind plus Pilates online at nakedmindstudio.com. That's nakedmindstudio.com. Well, an exercise we like to do is letting you know that if you're looking for dudes 25 to 54 years old, we got them right here on this program, and it's really affordable to advertise. There's a little facial hair, Bruce, right there. Over at ADVERTISEWITHBRUCE.com, find out how affordable it can be. If you're looking for those men, man, we've got a super targeted audience of dudes 25 to 54. We can hook you up right now at ADVERTISEWITHBrucePrichard.com. I'm sorry, ADVERTISEWITHBruce.com. I'll get it right. By the way, if you've got a question for us about this show or anything, we'd love to hear from you. It's at Prichard Show over on Twitter and Instagram. Something to Wrestle on Facebook. The easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is to check out somethingtowrestle.com. That's our YouTube channel. That's somethingtowrestle.com. Just in time for the holidays, we got plenty of stocking stuffers, new swag and merch available for you too over at somethingtowrestleshirts.com. That's somethingtowrestleshirts.com. I'd love to tell you that Bruce is very active on Twitter. He is not, but I am. Hey, it's Conrad, and you can find me on Instagram. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Man, I know you didn't want to talk about the Hart Foundation. I know you called an audible. I know we did Ask Bruce last week, but I really enjoyed talking about the good old days of the WWF and the Hart Foundation today.
See, once I get going, it's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah.
You got any suggestions for what you want to talk about next week? Because we wanted to talk about an old Survivor Series, and then I
wasn't there.
I wasn't even there. So I'm just asking, hypothetically, do you have any requests, or should we just throw it to the audience and let them make some suggestions for us?
Let them make some suggestions.
Tweet us what you want. Go over and find us on social media right now at Prichard Show. Let us know what you want to hear next week. We'll take together some of the best topics, throw it up on a poll, kick it old school, and throw you guys the keys to the show. Bruce, I'm enjoying what you guys are doing with WWE. I can't wait to watch a big SmackDown tonight on Fox. Don't you dare miss it. And Monday Night Raw is coming right on time this coming Monday. You've had a lot of these shows under your belts right now. I know we don't talk about current stuff, but how How you feeling about what's going on in WWE in 2023? It's got to be exciting.
It is exciting. Gonna get more exciting.
Oh, sounds like I need to watch SmackDown tonight, and you do too. And we'll see you guys next Friday right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Rock on.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.